I was pulling a tray of roasted vegetables from the oven when the heavy thumps on my front door rattled the glass. It wasn't a polite neighborly knock. It was the sound of an invasion. I set the hot pan down on the stove, wiping my hands on my apron. My name is Lauren Armstrong. I am 65 years old, a widow for the past 8 years, and I value the quiet sanctuary of my home more than anything else in the world. Through the frosted glass of the front door, I could see several shadowy figures huddled on my porch. My daughter Jenna rarely visited without asking for something, so my stomach immediately tightened. But when I turned the deadbolt and pulled the door open, the sight before me made my breath catch in my throat. Jenna stood there, chin jutted out in that defiant way she had since she was a teenager. Behind her stood her husband Kevin, looking at his shoes. And right behind him were Kevin's parents, Arthur and Brenda. Surrounding them like a barricade was a mountain of luggage. Massive, hard-shelled suitcases, stuffed duffel bags, and even a large cooler. Before I could even formulate a question, Jenna stepped forward, blocking my view of the street. She didn't offer a hug or a greeting. Instead, she looked me dead in the eye. Her expression hardened with a strange, rehearsed entitlement. "This is my new life," Jenna declared, her voice unnaturally loud in the quiet suburban evening. "And they're going to live here." I stood perfectly still. The evening breeze blew past them, carrying the scent of Brenda's overpowering floral perfume into my clean, quiet hallway. I looked at the four of them, then down at the scuffed wheels of their suitcases, resting inches from my welcome mat. My mind raced, processing the sheer audacity of the moment. Jenna had always pushed boundaries, but this was an entirely different level of disrespect. Kevin's parents stared at me with expectant, almost greedy eyes, waiting for me to step aside and wave them into my living room. I didn't move an inch. I kept my hand firmly planted on the edge of the door, completely blocking the entrance. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable, as they waited for me to yield. Brenda leaned over her husband's shoulder, offering a painfully fake smile. "Your garden is just lovely, Lauren. We're so exhausted from the drive. I can't wait to sit down on a real sofa." She nudged her suitcase forward, clearly expecting me to step back. I shifted my weight, planting my feet squarely in the center of the doorway. "Nobody is coming inside." I stated, my voice completely steady. Jenna's false confidence wavered for a fraction of a second. She scoffed, rolling her eyes as if I were a stubborn child acting out. "Mom, don't do this right now. We've been in the car for 6 hours. We have all our things. Just let us in so we can get settled in the guest rooms. Arthur has a bad back." "That sounds like a medical issue for Arthur to manage," I replied. "Not a housing issue for me to solve." "Why are you here, Jenna? And why is there a moving van's worth of luggage on my porch?" Kevin finally looked up from his shoes, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, Lauren, things got a little tight at the apartment. We needed a place to crash, and Jenna said you had plenty of room. She said you wouldn't mind helping us get back on our feet." I stared at him, then shifted my gaze to my daughter. "You told them I wouldn't mind taking in 4 adults without a single phone call or text message warning me." Jenna crossed her arms, her face turning a blotchy red. "I didn't want to give you time to overthink it and say no. We are family, Mom. Family helps family. Arthur and Brenda lost their lease, and Kevin and I couldn't afford our place anymore. It just made sense for all of us to pool our resources here." "Pool resources?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "Or drain mine." Brenda gasped softly, clutching the handle of her purse, but I didn't care about offending her. I was looking at my daughter, realizing just how deeply she viewed my home as her own personal safety net. She genuinely believed she could ambush me, use social pressure, and force her way into my quiet life. "Mom, move," Jenna demanded, taking a step forward. "I have a headache, and I'm not standing out here all night." I tightened my grip on the doorframe. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "You aren't stepping foot in this house until you tell me the truth," I challenged, keeping my tone perfectly even. "3 weeks ago, you called me crying about your rent. I transferred you $800 to cover the gap. If you lost your apartment, where did my money go?" Kevin shot Jenna a panicked look. Arthur suddenly found the porch ceiling fascinating. Jenna flinched, her arms crossing tighter over her chest. "Things came up okay. The car needed new brakes and Kevin had some debts to clear. The money went to essentials. So you used my money to pay off Kevin's debts while letting your rent bounce, knowing you could just pack up his parents and force your way into my home." I pieced it together quickly. The sheer manipulation was staggering. Brenda piped up from the back, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Lauren, let's not talk about finances on the doorstep. It's so tacky. We brought our own towels and I'm a wonderful cook. We won't be a burden at all. We just need a few months to save up a deposit for a big house for the four of us." "A few months?" I repeated flatly. I knew exactly how this played out. A few months would turn into a year. I would become the live-in maid and chef for 4 able-bodied adults. Brenda would take over my kitchen. Arthur would dominate my television. Kevin would sit around waiting for opportunities, and Jenna would continue to drain my retirement savings. I looked at the house behind me, the house my late husband and I worked 30 years to pay off. It was spotless, peaceful, and entirely mine. Jenna sighed loudly, exasperated. "Mom, seriously, stop being dramatic. We are already here. It's not like we can just turn around and go somewhere else. You have 3 empty bedrooms. It's selfish for one person to hoard all this space when her own daughter is struggling." She reached out, attempting to push past my shoulder and grab the handle of my front door. I didn't step back. I moved firmly into her path, forcing her to stop or physically tackle me. I looked deep into her eyes, seeing the entitlement radiating from her. "You made choices without me, Jenna," I whispered. "Now I am making mine." I squared my shoulders, looking past Jenna to Kevin, then to his parents. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs. "No," I stated loudly. "Leave my house and I'm done covering your expenses." For a second, the porch was dead silent. Even the crickets seemed to stop chirping. Then Jenna erupted. Her face twisted into a mask of pure fury, and she screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a loud, piercing shriek of pure frustration, the kind a toddler throws in a grocery store aisle. It echoed down the quiet suburban street, causing the neighbor's porch light to flick on. "Are you out of your mind?" Jenna shrieked, pointing a trembling finger in my face. "You can't do this. I am your daughter. You are abandoning me on the street. You are a 35-year-old woman with a husband." I corrected calmly, not raising my voice to match hers. "You abandoned your own responsibilities. You lied to me to steal money, and you thought you could bully me by bringing an audience." Kevin finally stepped up, trying to play the peacemaker. "Lauren, come on. It's getting dark. It's going to rain. You really can't turn us away tonight. Just let us in." I glanced at the sky. Dark clouds were indeed rolling in, and thunder rumbled in the distance. I was a firm woman, but I wasn't entirely heartless. However, giving them an inch meant they would take a mile. "Listen to me very carefully," I instructed, my voice sharp enough to cut through Jenna's ongoing rant. You can bring 2 bags inside. You will sleep on the living room floor tonight. You will not unpack. You will not go into the guest rooms. By noon tomorrow, you will be gone. If you argue with these terms, I will shut this door right now." Arthur grumbled something under his breath, but Brenda quickly shushed him. Jenna stared at me, her chest heaving, tears of anger spilling down her cheeks. She realized for the first time in her life that her tantrums held absolutely no power over me anymore. I stepped back, leaving the door open just wide enough for them to squeeze through. They dragged their two bags inside the heavy silence hanging over us like a suffocating blanket. I didn't sleep well. Before going to bed, I had taken all my valuables from the living room, brought them upstairs, and locked my master bedroom door. I wasn't taking any chances. When I came downstairs at 7:00 a.m., the living room smelled faintly of stale sweat and cheap cologne. Kevin and Jenna were curled up on my expensive rug under a thin blanket, while Arthur was snoring loudly in my late husband's leather recliner. I walked past them into the kitchen and stopped dead. Brenda was already awake. She had opened all my cabinets and was actively rearranging my spices. My cast-iron skillet, which I kept carefully seasoned and stored in the oven, was sitting in the sink, submerged in soapy water. "What are you doing?" I demanded. Brenda jumped, clutching a jar of paprika. "Oh, good morning, Lauren. I was just making some eggs for the kids. Your kitchen is so lovely, but the layout is a bit chaotic. I thought I'd help you organize." I'd walked straight to the sink, pulled the soaking skillet out of the soapy water, and grabbed a towel. "You don't rearrange another woman's kitchen," I said, meticulously, drying the heavy pan. I opened the pantry, placed the skillet inside, and locked the pantry door, slipping the key into my cardigan pocket. Brenda watched me, her mouth slightly open. "I was just trying to help," she muttered, offended. "I don't need help," I replied. I walked over to the coffee maker, unplugged it, and wrapped the cord around the machine. I picked it up and set it on the high shelf above the fridge, entirely out of her reach. "If you want breakfast, there is a diner 3 blocks down the street." Arthur shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his back. "Coffee ready, Brenda. That chair is a nightmare to sleep in." I turned to look at him. "It's a chair meant for reading, Arthur, not a hotel bed. You have exactly 5 hours until noon. I suggest you spend that time figuring out your next move." Jenna appeared in the doorway, her hair a mess, her eyes glaring daggers at me. "You're really going to starve us out? Is this how a mother acts?" "A mother provides for children," I replied, pouring myself a glass of cold water. "I am dealing with adults." Jenna marched into the kitchen, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor. She pointed toward the living room where Kevin was slowly packing his blanket. "You're choosing strangers over your own daughter," she hissed, her voice trembling with manufactured grief. "I have nowhere to go, Mom. Do you even care?" I leaned against the counter, taking a slow sip of my water. "I am not choosing strangers, Jenna. I am choosing myself. You brought strangers into my house to use as human shields, hoping I'd be too polite to kick them out." Brenda and Arthur exchanged uncomfortable glances and slowly backed out of the kitchen, leaving Jenna and me alone. Jenna crossed her arms, shifting her tactics. The anger melted away, replaced by a calculating look. "Fine. If we have to leave today, we need a deposit for a new place. I need my allowance early this month, plus an extra $2,000. Send it now, and we'll leave by noon." For the past 3 years, I had been sending Jenna $500 on the first of every month. It was supposed to be temporary to help her while she found a better job. She had clearly come to view it as a permanent salary for simply existing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. I opened my banking app, using my fingerprint to log in. "What are you doing?" she asked, peering at my screen. "You said you need your allowance?" I murmured, navigating to the recurring transfers page. I found the mandate labeled Jenna Monthly and tapped it. "Yeah, send it," she demanded, tapping her foot. I looked her directly in the eyes, pressed the Delete Scheduled Transfer button, and confirmed it. Jenna's eyes widened as she realized what I had just done. "Did you just cancel it?" she gasped, her voice cracking. "Yes," I answered, slipping the phone back into my pocket. "You are a married woman. You and Kevin can fund your own transition. My bank account is no longer your emergency fund. The financial tap is completely shut off. She stared at me completely paralyzed. The realization that I was no longer an endless resource hit her like a physical blow. Without saying another word, I walked past her and headed to the living room to check the time. It was 9 a.m. 3 hours left. By 11:45 a.m., the atmosphere in my house was suffocating. I sat at my dining room table, sipping a fresh cup of tea, watching the clock tick down. In the living room, absolutely no packing was happening. Kevin was scrolling mindlessly on his phone. Arthur was dozing again, and Brenda was reading a magazine she had pulled from my coffee table rack. Jenna was pacing the hallway, shooting venomous glares in my direction. They thought I was bluffing. They genuinely believed that once the clock struck 12, I would sigh, throw my hands up, and let them stay out of sheer exhaustion. They were waiting for me to break. I set my teacup down. The porcelain clinked sharply against the saucer. I stood up, walked into the living room, and grabbed the thick handle of Kevin's massive rolling suitcase. He looked up startled as I yanked it away from the wall. "Hey, wait! What are you doing?" Kevin stammered, dropping his phone. I didn't answer him. I dragged the heavy suitcase across the rug, the wheels clacking loudly on the hardwood floor of the hallway. I unlocked the front door, kicked it open, and shoved the suitcase out onto the porch. I turned around and walked back in. Brenda dropped her magazine, her face pale. Arthur jerked awake. I grabbed Brenda's floral duffel bag, next hauling it over my shoulder. "Lauren, please," Brenda cried out, scrambling to her feet. "We aren't ready. We don't have a plan. That is your problem." "Brenda," I replied, tossing the duffel bag onto the porch next to the suitcase. "I gave you my boundary. You chose to ignore it." Jenna rushed forward, trying to grab my arm, but I sidestepped her with practiced ease. "Mom, stop. You're humiliating us. The neighbors are going to see. Then you better start loading your car," I suggested, pointing toward the street where Kevin's battered sedan was parked. I walked over to the corner, picked up Arthur's coat and Kevin's backpack, and walked them out to the porch. I was not yelling. I was not arguing. I was simply removing their belongings from my property. Action always speaks louder than empty threats. Panic finally set in. Realizing I was completely serious, Kevin scrambled off the floor and rushed to grab the remaining bags before I could toss them outside. Brenda was fluttering around, crying fake tears and wringing her hands while Arthur muttered complaints about his back as he slowly lifted his own suitcase. Jenna stood in the middle of the hallway, her face flushed dark red with absolute rage. She had lost control of the narrative, lost her audience, and lost her safety net, all in one morning. "You are a terrible mother," she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "I am never speaking to you again. You are dead to me." I stopped wiping the table and looked at her. "If not speaking to me means you stop taking my money and disrespecting my home, then I accept those terms." She let out a frustrated growl, grabbing her designer purse. A purse I now knew my money had probably paid for, and stormed out the front door. Kevin and his parents scurried after her like frightened mice, dragging their heavy bags down the concrete path toward their cramped car. I stepped out onto the porch to ensure they didn't leave anything behind. Mrs. Higgins from next door was watering her petunias, blatantly watching the spectacle. I gave her a polite wave. She nodded back, her eyes wide. Jenna slammed the passenger door of the sedan so hard I thought the glass might shatter. Kevin started the engine, the car sputtering loudly before backing out of my driveway. I stood on the porch, feeling the cool midday breeze against my face. The heavy, suffocating energy that had invaded my home just 14 hours ago evaporated completely. I turned around, stepped back inside, and firmly shut the front door. I locked the deadbolt. Then I walked straight to my garage, opened my toolbox, and pulled out a heavy-duty screwdriver and the brand-new deadbolt lock set I had purchased a year ago, but never got around to installing. It was time for a quick DIY project. Changing a door lock isn't complicated. I unscrewed the inner plate, slid out the old cylinder, and secured the new brass fixture I'd bought months ago. In 15 minutes, the heavy click of the deadbolt made it official. Jenna's emergency spare key was now completely useless. My sanctuary was secured. I plugged my coffee maker back in and checked my phone. The screen was flooded with predictable notifications. Jenna, you're a monster. Jenna, we have to sleep in the car because of you. Jenna, transfer me $500 right now or you'll never see me again. There was no apology for her lies, only demands and manufactured guilt. I didn't type a single word in response. I simply went to her contact profile and tapped hide alerts. I did the same for Kevin. I didn't block them. I wanted a written record just in case, but I refused to let their digital tantrums interrupt my morning. I poured a fresh cup of coffee and sat down in the living room. The house was perfectly silent. No heavy footsteps, no demands, no suffocating perfume. The crushing weight of fixing Jenna's problems was gone. I had finally put myself first. But I knew her well enough to wonder, would she really give up that easily? 4 weeks passed. Autumn painted the neighborhood in brilliant shades of gold, and my life settled into a wonderful, uninterrupted rhythm. Through a mutual friend, I learned that Kevin and his parents had scraped together enough for a cramped apartment. Forced to pay their own rent, all 4 of them were finally working full-time. One Tuesday afternoon, while I was pruning my rose bushes, my phone vibrated. Jenna, hey, I need $50 for groceries. Things are tight this week. She texted as if the massive blowout on my porch had never happened. No check-in. Just an expectation that enough time had passed for my wallet to reopen. I felt a brief flicker of sadness for the daughter I wished I had, but absolutely zero guilt for the one I actually had. I tapped the screen and typed my reply. Lauren, you have a husband and 2 in-laws living with you. Figure it out. I hit send, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and went back to my roses. I had spent decades sacrificing my own peace to cushion her falls, but I was done being a safety net. My home was my castle, my money was my own, and my peace of mind was absolutely priceless.